Hey,
Hey
check out that
there.
intro. That intro is awesome. That got me
We're a
all
pro-
pumped up.
we're a proper show now.
Heck
Yeah, we
yeah.
have a real show. We have our name, even the panel, and it's growing on me because I was like, oh, so simple. And it is. It's what the show's about. Kind of. We talk about comics, and we're going to do that today. And it's been a fun development. Jason approached me with the idea for the show like early summer, even so it's been months. But we've done a handful of shows, but it's kind of been coming together. We're figuring out more what it should be every time. Initially, we're like we're gonna be like comics kayfabe, but not cucked or something like that.
Yeah.
And
It's
and
evolved and still continuing to evolve.
yeah, and now it's like kind of specific, which I like. And today's kind of a interesting, fun one too. I'm gonna screen share, and Jason, you can kind of give the
Sure.
intro. Actually, before we even do that, I wonder we got two people watching. More people will come in, I'm sure. And sometimes it lies because it said 8 right before that, so it's
Right.
like fluctuating. So people say hi from the chat. I'm about to check over and catch up with the chat a little bit too. And then I wanted to ask you guys just how you're doing because it's been a while. Abra, I just saw
Yes.
you did a stream with Vaughn. How did that go?
It went okay. I mean, there were a lot of people streaming, so I'm hoping more people will get to check it, on the replay. But I had fun geeking out with Vaughn. He is just such a cool guy, very creative. I love his works. And it was nice because, I get to interview him and everything and geek out. So good times.
Nice. I like calling people someone calling using the word works. Like just your works. I'm familiar with your works.
Yeah.
It's like biblical.
Yeah. It's like Moses handing down the 10 Commandments.
Yeah. Oh, and Jason, how you been?
Well, as you can see, I don't have my normal background. I'm not in my studio at home. Due to work, for the past 2 weeks, I've been staying in a hotel. I'm in an undisclosed location. I'm as part of my day job, I'm helping a plant that reports to my business group president to kind of do a reset. So I'm doing long hours, and I'm living out of a hotel room. It hasn't been too bad because it allowed me to catch up on some reading. So I'm
Yes.
digging Joe Frankenstein too. So I'm enjoying this, and then I am working on. I brought my Mac, so I am working on Jupiter issue 2. So
Oh,
you can still get Jupiter issue 1 on Indiegogo and Find My Comic. But it when I get home and I've got some energy, I am working on Jupiter issue 2. So it's not a complete waste of time, but you might be able to tell from my eyes, hotel living, it's beginning to wear on me. So
Hmm.
we'll see
It's
how
like
long.
it's rough.
it's I almost like fantasize about it because I never do it. So it's like grass is always greener. I'm like, oh, the life of like a rock star, different hotel every night, or a stand-up comedian, or like a comic book artist who's doing a different convention every weekend, and they're staying up late talking comics and getting drunk. And I'm like, I want to live that life. I
I'm,
did it once because I kind of missed the boat on that because of the industry like self-destructing.
yeah.
Oh
But
God, yeah.
but we had a big convention over the summer in Tampa that was really fun. I met Abra there,
It
and
was a lot of fun.
yeah, and this is actually a little segue. Is I was talking with a bunch of people there, and who was it? It was Mr. Biggins, and he's like, we did stay up all night drinking whiskey and talking comics at least one night, like maybe multiple nights, but one in particular, I'm thinking of Kelsey Shannon was there,
Yeah.
and it was like awesome. And then it came up, Mr. Biggins is kind of like, you guys got to read the classics. You call yourselves comic artists. There's no excuse if you don't read Frank Miller's Daredevil and Cerebus. Those are like the two he named.
Nice.
And so I did. I went home and bought the Cerebus, which is like a kind of famous indie book. They come in these big phone books you can get, and and I uh and yeah, I started reading it. It's great. But I was Jason, you know even more than me about the book, so you can give it an intro if you want.
Yeah. So can you make me full screen just for a moment?
Yeah, and can you guys hear sizzling in the background of mine? Because I might mute for a second if I'm not
No
talking.
sizzling. We're sizzle free.
Okay, good.
So on tonight's show, we're going to look at 2 particular episodes of Cerebus. They're I kind of recommended them because you don't need to know anything about Cerebus to enjoy it. But again, it's 2 issues out of the 300 issue run of Cerebus. So this is issue 300 of Cerebus, and it's famous because it was the record breaker for it held the record until Spawn 300 of an indie comic book that reached 300 issues. What people might not know is that because Dave Sim was his own publisher and he was running from the late 70s up until the mid 2000s, there was a key point in comic book history where, because he didn't work for Marvel or DC, and because every month Cerebus came out like clockwork, it was pre-internet. It was the best clearinghouse for information about the industry and some industry activism. So in each issue of Cerebus, there'd be like letters from Dave in the front of the issue, where he would basically air grievances, like the Jack Kirby original art issues that Frank Miller was having with Daredevil and so forth. This was a place where, the circulation was 50, 60,000 issues a month, copies a month. People in the industry were using it like a bulletin board, right? And people don't realize it now because we've got the advantage of the internet. And some key historical things happened in the pages of Cerebus. This right here is issue 116. This was the first publication of the Comic Book Creators Bill of Rights, the Creators Bill of Rights. So this was workshopped at the Northampton Summit, where the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle guys were there, Rick Veitch, Scott McCloud, Dave Sim. They all met at a hotel in where the Turtles guys were in Northampton, and they hammered out the Creators Bill of Rights, which was it wasn't a union, but it was them as creators saying to the industry, if we're not doing work for hire, if we're doing our own stuff, this is what we expect. And then, in terms of exposure, this issue of Spawn that he scripted.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, this is issue 10 of Spawn. There was a period of time where people were making fun of Todd McFarlane's writing. So he had like Alan Moore, Dave Sim, Neil Gaiman, and somebody else script issues of Spawn. For this issue, Dave Sim focused basically, this is kind of a manifesto about creators' rights. So a lot of people maybe never read Cerebus, but they came, they were buying Spawn during the speculation boom, and they encountered the character here, right? Then later on, as the image boom was happening, mid 90s, Dave Sim collected many of his articles, his essays, and so forth, and his how-tos on self-publishing, released the Cerebus Guide to Self-Publishing. Now, because we've got the situation with Diamond, situation with the internet and crowdfunding, a lot of this is outdated, but in here is a lot of good essays and good pep talk about being disciplined, being your own boss. So it's worth a read, partly for nostalgia, partly because some of the information in there is evergreen. And then,
I would love to see the differences between self-publishing back then and now. I'm sure, back then it was so much harder, and that made it so much cooler in a lot of ways. But now it's a little bit easier because of the internet.
And this is issue 231 of Cerebus, and it holds a special place in my heart because this was the first time my artwork ever appeared in a comic book shop.
Oh, wow.
I was on my little zine, which was a precursor to Jupiter, was on the back cover here as a plug from Dave Sim himself. So it has a sentimental place in my heart. So that's just kind of some historical context about Cerebus as a series, and its importance in the realm of indie comics.
Yeah, that's cool.
This was my first exposure to Cerebus, so I wasn't sure what to expect going in. These issues, I had to read it a couple times because when I first looked at it, I didn't know what to make of it. It's just so different. I like the art. I like the simplicity of it, but it's very intriguing too. Like, if you just kind of look at the panels, I like Cerebus, the design, the aardvark design. It's very simple, but then everything around him can have all this detail. It was just a neat, I guess, introduction to the character and that world.
Yeah, and some of my kind of recent deep dives, I'm only up, as I've been kind of reading it in order, and I'm only up to like issue 25, like almost like the first phone book. And apparently right after that is when it gets really good. and it's been good, but it just hasn't been like mind blowing necessarily. But it also is like a really fun, cool indie comic. But I know later on, after like issue 50 or so, he started collaborating with Gerhard, who's like an amazing artist, and he draws all the backgrounds. So that's part of why it has the collage feel, Abra, where
Yeah.
Cerberus is kind of simple, and then the backgrounds are super detailed.
It started out as a kind of a parody of Barry Windsor Smith's Conan series.
Hmm.
And so the first 25 issues are mostly standalone stories where just like Conan, Cerebus is a sword for hire, gets stuck in situations, but there's kind of a comedy element. And then beginning with issue 26, Dave said, "I've kind of exhausted this joke. Now I want to use it as a living, breathing political cartoon." So issues 26 through 50 were this story called The High Society, where Cerebus goes into the city and gets swept up in current events and basically becomes the prime minister of the city state. And that was where it became a little more cerebral, a little more tilted towards political satire and political essays, and kind of doing some social commentary, but more about the civilized world versus the kind of the more base impulses you'd see in a sword and sorcery story. And then after that, there's a longer story called Church and State. During that series, those arcs, that's where Gerhard joined him. And so I recommended these 2 issues because it's a 2-issue dream sequence.
Yeah.
So you don't need to know anything about the character, but it kind of it allows you to kind of stream of consciousness, get into his world.
Yeah, and let me ask you, Jason, because I heard too that later on, it's like issue like 200 or so. There's like 30 issues straight that all take place in one bar. But have you heard of? Did you read those, or have you heard about those?
Yeah, what happens is later on in the world of Cerebus, it was very an interesting prediction of the future. Later on in the storyline of Cerebus, the city state that he's in falls to basically a radical feminist revolution,
Oh,
and
God.
all the men are no longer allowed to keep jobs. And basically it's this kind of weird, it almost take like the Taliban, but make it women. They're the Sirenists. And so Cerebus basically has to hide out, and all the men aren't allowed to own property or have a job. So they're stuck in like the bar, right? And yeah, there's things like that happened. And the back third of Cerebus is like this simmering boil that eventually I don't want to spoil it, but eventually he's had enough, and things change towards the end of the series.
Okay, that's a little interesting because that actually sounds pretty hilarious, like a 1984 style dystopian prediction that no one else has really done, and it's in comics, and it's like oddly accurate in kind of a fun way. But if you Google it, it's like they kind of say around where at like issue 175, they say Dave Sim went crazy and he got misandrist or whatever, or not misandrist, the opposite. He hates women and blah blah blah. And
So
they say he got cringy, blah blah blah. But I don't know, is that true? Or
well, what I would say is that he was an incredibly creative person. He smoked a lot of marijuana, and he was alone in his room a lot of the time, right? And I think those things probably put his brain into some loops. And so a lot of people need to be grounded by like a day job, need to be grounded by a wife or whatever. So Dave Sim was in a situation where he was financially independent. He was alone all day in the room, listening to the radio, smoking doobies, and maybe there were some unwise choices.
Sounds
know
like
what it's like?
Apocalypse Now or something. Like he's Marlon
Yeah.
Brando that just went insane.
yeah, it's like Twitter before Twitter. He's
Yeah.
like, he got
I've
ratified
seen
by
the
Twitter.
horrors. The
Yeah, the
horrors you've
horror.
seen.
It's
Yeah.
always good to have balance. You always need somebody to creatively check you and to call you out on your baloney. Now sometimes Dave Sims is one of those people where he could say something, and I know we all have this friend. We all have this friend that will say something, but they'll say it the wrong way, and they'll get half the room upset at them. Dave Sim is like that, very, very dashing, very provocative. and to some extent, he was probably the first person that I recall being like canceled, right?
Oh,
He was
wow.
he was canceled by the comic book journalists. They did not like him because of his some of his political statements, but they took great joy in Heidi McDonald in particular took great joy in canceling him in the mid
Oh, that's funny that
2000s.
she goes that far back. She's the
Hmm.
worst.
Oh yeah,
I
yeah.
love when your boy Zach tears her a new one. He seems to do it at least once a
Yeah,
month these
it's
days.
brilliant.
He's really fighting the good fight. Your boy Zach, he's keeping it up. His videos are like still super solid and hilarious and kind of
Absolutely.
needed, I think.
He seemed like he needed a little bit of a break for a while, but he's found that spark
Yeah,
again.
he went on a little break there where he was constantly talking about Indiana Jones 5 or whatever, and nobody cared, and he kept doubling down. And
Yeah, or
that,
like NFTs or Bitcoin or something like that, like your stock portfolio. Like, I don't know.
yeah,
Just like, where's old Zach? But yeah, he just needed to recharge those batteries, I guess.
yeah,
I I liked his adventures in apartment hunting in New York. He came away with some good
yeah.
stories there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. But yeah, so reading these, I did find it really inspirational, and there's some funny ways to like look at it. Is like you could, if you're thinking of it, and I think Dave Sim kind of was thinking of it this way a little bit. Is like he knew his series was going to be 300 pages. I think because he had an acid trip in like the late 70s or something, and I don't know if he was on issue 10 of Cerebus or something. So then he's like, it's going to be 300, and then Cerebus is going to die on issue 300, and then the series will end. So he kind of had that vision while he's high on acid. So then, if you know you're going to do 300 issues, that's when you kind of are like that. Some can be like a negative way to put it would be like filler, but also a way to put it is like you got 300 pennies. You can spend them on some fun stuff. So you're like,
Yeah.
we can do 25 issues in a bar. We can do some dream sequences. There's some times where he gets like abducted by God and has to talk to God for like multiple issues, and like so it can just get really weird. And it's cool, the idea that of when it's like yeah, when you're not racing to the end of the story, that you can kind of set up.
Gives you
um
room to breathe.
yeah, and then I think too, dreams are all about the subconscious, and then what this kind of becomes like that's a little bit cool is like this is the subconscious of the story, like in the reader. It kind of is affecting the reader's subconscious because even I reading it, I don't know exactly what's going on, and
Yeah.
Abra too, but some things kind of rise to the surface a little bit. Some of the mood and tone and some of the things come up as like Cerberus's own inner conflicts, and then there is some stuff that you would get more from it if you do have some context. I know it's his relationship with a woman named Jaka that
Mhm.
Jason knows way more, but she's come up even in these first issues I've been
Hmm.
reading, and I know she's kind of the on again off again lost love of Cerebus by the end of the story, kind of, and she's in his dreams, so that's kind of like uh, part of the meaningfulness that is a little bit lost if you're reading it without reading anything else. But then just taking it as like a comic art medium thing is also inspirational. The fact of how freeing a comic can be if it's an actual literal dream. And I was thinking, this is one other thing is it, as much as you'd think, it's a little bit hasn't been done that often. Where you're like, even in movies, they do dream sequences, and usually the way movies will do it is they don't get dreamy because they want it to be a fake out. So then you wake up and it was all a dream, and people kind of hate that now,
Yeah.
and it's kind of a cliche. But but if you actually did like a dream sequence where it's actually dreamy, um, and then took the time to actually have fun with that, that alone is like kind of a fun thing to do, and it's a little rarer than you'd think. And so he's definitely like sinking his teeth in with the art and the paneling and what can happen and the little journey that Cerebus can go on in these 2 pages, which is like if it's 45 pages that he drew, just to for not really advancing the story that much. Like, so that's the thing. If I was drawing a comic, 45 pages, that could be 1/6 of an epic screenplay that I wrote or whatever. And Dave Sim's like, nope, this is like literally nothing other than a little bit of subconscious meaning. So it's a lot of work for like just that texture that you get from it or whatever.
It's fun to see, without an editor, without a corporation telling him he can't do it, he can do a 2-page sequence with a character gets up in the middle of the night and takes a piss, right? That goes for 2 pages, right?
That was insane. That cracked me up so hard. I'm like, what? First, I was like, what the hell's going on? And then I'm like, oh no, he's peeing all these panels.
Yeah.
So something else is that I don't want to take for granted is there's I'm gonna, for the lack of a better term, I'm gonna call it animation or cartooning. Could you go back like 2 pages to the part with where he's on the water? Right
Yeah.
there. So even if there's some artists right now who've got the full range of art, CMYK color, and they can't affect water. And these 2 guys affected water and the slickness of water in black and white, right? So just from the cartooning and the craft, there's great lessons to learn here, great inspiration to see what they were able to do with literally black and white, and also the way they were able to capture motion.
Yeah.
So as an artist, kind of like study some of this stuff, I think it's impressive.
Yeah.
That's a
What
very good
about-
point.
Are you guys curious at all about, maybe we can even go through a few and see if, because I read it kind of fast and I was like, this could definitely be something like Abra was saying, like you could read it 3 or 4 times and try and be like, now what does this mean?
Yeah, it took me like the first time I read it, I have to say, I really was like, I don't know if I like this. Like, what the hell's going on? But then it's like I needed a moment to kind of take it in, appreciate it, and then I kind of went back and just kind of looked at each panel for the art. And then I was just trying to, I guess, experience each panel as if I were dreaming it. But yeah, it's like an experience when you're going, at least with these 2 issues, it definitely felt like it was taking you on a ride a bit.
Yeah. And it's
It was a bit insane, but
yeah, it's okay to even not like it. Like I don't even know out of context, like I can appreciate it for what it is. But
yeah,
if this was all it was, like 2 issues, short story that's just a dream, I actually might not like it as much. Like, but the fact it's sandwiched by this epic story that it does serve the subconscious of this character, then I can appreciate it even more.
it's like the sum of the parts.
Yeah.
I have to ask too, not being that familiar with the lore of Cerebus, what made him decide on the aardvark?
So I think it started as a gag, but it basically was a Conan world where the main character was an aardvark. It could be because he that was the mascot for his graphic design company, and he just went with it. But what happened is that later he built the lore that in this world, periodically human beings are born as aardvarks. So his parents were human beings. And basically those aardvarks are magical nexus points, and he doesn't know that. So the scene where the lady's telling him it's
put the hat on.
Put the hat on.
Yeah.
So he's got all this shame, like I'm a misfit. Why am I an aardvark, right? So to some extent, Dave Sim was building the world on the fly, but that's the reason there. Now this particular thing here, there's a character named Red Sonja, who is a caricature of Red Sonja, and that is her mom. So this is his mother-in-law dressed like his wife. So he's kind of like freaking out, like she's going to end up looking like this in 30 years or whatever. So that nightmarish character there in the chainmail bikini is his mother-in-law. So he's
that's so funny you say that. That's like every guy's worst nightmare. They always say, like, if you're thinking about dating or marrying a chick, look at their mom. Oh my
that's
God.
hilarious.
But yeah, I was saying, I mentioned before about how his design is so simplistic, but just look at everything else there on the page. It's so detailed, and it just kind of complements and yet contrasts so well. Not really sure, really how to put it into words, but I did really respect that aspect of it, even though it kind of felt like a weird fevered dream, but really appreciated the art.
A quick commentary on this page. I actually would put on the short list of things every artist hates to draw and dreads it if it ever comes up. It's a chessboard. So if ever you had to draw a chessboard in a comic, you're like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God, this is going to take forever. And I got to figure out the perspective in every piece, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, he does it here. And it's funny, like he's doing the chess.
Yeah.
Thing.
It's so funny.
Chessboard, horses, cars, sometimes cowboy hats, sometimes guns. These are the things that are like actually pretty hard to draw. But then look at, he does do what I would do. He shorthands the chess pieces
Yep.
to all be the same shape when it gets far away. But it's funny.
Can you go back 2 pages? I want to point out something in the trees there. So that page on the right, I love that page because it's got depth and it's got claustrophobia, right? He's clawing his way, it's just the gestures, the posture, and so forth. I think it's fantastic.
Kind of tearing through the forest.
Yep.
Now, is that him getting bigger? Like it's almost like the perspective of the trees are getting.
It could be
smaller and like kind of almost suffocating him like vines or something.
It could be because what this is showing is he starts out basically as a barbarian, and by the end of high society, he's a politician. He's a prime minister. So you're right. It could be not that the force is getting more constrained, but he's getting bigger. He's outgrowing the barbarism. On the next page, when he's going through the chessboard, that's him. He's trying to get through the political game to get to the moon. Later on in Church and State, he does go to the moon, and this is a premonition of he's trying to get past the day-to-day politics. He's trying to ascend to something. And in the religion of the city-state, there's a prophet who will go to the moon. So in his mind, he's egotistical. So he's like, I got to get to the moon. And then sure enough, he gets past the politics and gets to the moon. And what does he find?
It's almost like he brings the moon to him in a way. Like he's on that journey, but then it's like he wills it to him.
It's pretty cool involving the moon in a fantasy comic. Because it's sort of sci-fi, but it's not exactly. It's definitely fits. It's like kind of like religious. And
then he goes into it.
Yeah. He goes into the moon, and then that's Red Sophia.
Ooh la la.
Yeah.
Or is that Jaka?
That's right. I think it starts out Red Sophia. It becomes Jaka on the bottom page.
Yeah.
That haircut with the bangs, that's Jaka.
Yeah,
so
that's Jaka.
Yep.
So he's torn between two women.
Yep. The woman he's with, the woman that he wants. And then here he wakes up, and because there's no corporation, there's no editor, he gets to do a 2-page emptying of the bladder.
Yeah. It just cracked. Like I said, at first I'm like, what's going on here? And then it's like, oh, now I get it. No way he did this.
And you know what I'm curious about is because sometimes they do it where every panel's the same, but they redraw it every time, so there's subtle differences. And
that's what I was trying to tell. I couldn't tell.
Yeah, sometimes they do it where it's identical, and it would be a little bit of a story. Like it could be meaningful which one it is, and it's also to save work if you just want to. But I think he just photocopied it. I think they're all identical.
I recollect in the letters pages, they talked about this expensive Xerox machine that they bought in like the late 80s because they wanted to be able to zoom in and they wanted to be able to create these sets. So yeah, I'm pretty sure it's just Xerox. So nice little hack to get through the deadline.
Yeah.
It blew me away. I was, you couldn't get away with something like that.
This is funny.
For a mainstream.
It's funny because the art becomes less of the point. It's like a placeholder to kind of just make the point that of time passing kind of, I don't know, it's kind of funny. The actual storytelling is just the sound effects at this point. Yeah.
Yeah, just
and then the next chapter is called...
That's actually the end.
Yeah, drip.
Yeah. Then he goes back to sleep and then he keeps dreaming. See, that's actually kind of fun too, is like the fact that if you're reading it, I would like think like, oh, that was the dream one and whatever. And it's like, nope, here's more. He went back to sleep and he gets more dreams, which is actually, that's kind of relatable. That's like how dreams work too, you know?
Yeah, to start a whole new, new series, new branch of dreaming.
Yeah.
I also appreciated that, you could go back and look at the old ads too and, see where you could pick up the shirts and they had I think, like, a plushie in there or something.
Yeah.
The letter page, I mentioned earlier that he was a clearinghouse for information. The letters pages were always good. It was always worth reading the letter pages. And sometimes Dave would kind of wind them up or he'd kind of demolish them with his responses. And other times he would be like, I want to talk about this topic or whatever. So the letters pages were also a highlight.
Yeah. And then so at part 2, and he's still sleeping. Yeah, I wonder like if I was buying it weekly, you got you're in like deep 70 pages. I think I would appreciate it, but I wondered if he had clap back even in the moment of people being like, "Why are you wasting issues doing nothing? We want to know the story." Do you know what happened there?
Yeah, there were sometimes people would write in and go, 2 pages have been peeing, what's going on? Or they'd be like, make him a barbarian again, or they would kind of they say stuff like that. And it was a charm of the book was that it was like clockwork. It was every month these guys were putting it out. So if it there was only one time I recall where he had a writer's block or self-doubt or whatever. And then what happened is like 2 issues came out like within a week of each other. Right. And then he was back in the saddle. So to some extent, these guys, plugging away in their studio in Canada and making this comic book is almost as entertaining as the comic book itself.
Well, let me ask you guys as creators, do you ever find yourself in that situation where you're just like, holy crap, I don't know where to go with my story. I feel stuck. Just kind of waiting for that inspiration to strike you again?
It's different a little bit for me because I know with Dave Sim, like he's figuring it out as he goes along. And usually I've been telling slightly shorter stories, still kind of long, but I'll make sure I know the whole thing before I even start really. Like with Earthbound, I had the whole script. Although I guess if I consider Earthbound to eventually be like 3 big stories, and I have Grand Prix being the second. I haven't even written the third one yet, but I have an idea of what I kind of want it to be. So it could happen though if I jump in and hit a little, because I do sometimes hit little dead ends, but it's not while I'm also trying to draw it.
Right.
I can pivot to a different project or whatever. What about you, Jason?
I have the luxury of having a day job where I get to think about my comic book all day long. So, but by the time I get to the drawing board, I know what I'm doing, and I've got Jupiter basically planned out like for 20 issues. So I don't have that problem. But definitely I can't imagine setting a 300 issue target and seeing what that feels like to show up every day. So kudos to them.
That would be frustrating, I think, just to have that writer's block and, struggle to try to come up with, okay, where do I want to take my character today? I love that Wolverine kind of.
Could you flip back? So something you mentioned is that starting with like issue 10 or so, he did a parody of Moon Knight. Okay. And it was the Moon Roach. Okay. And then what happened is that once a year, he would bring this character back, who was a crazy person in this medieval times. He'd bring them back as a different character. Maybe actually I take it back. Maybe it started out as Captain Cockroach, and and then it became Moon Roach, and eventually it was Wolveroach. But a couple things are interesting about this. One is that I am 99% certain that this character was the inspiration for the Tick. Okay. So I'd have to do some research to verify that, but the guy who came up with the Tick, I'm pretty sure he was reading CEREBUS, and he's like, I'm going to take this character and take it out of CEREBUS and just make it his own delusional, flamboyant satire superhero. And then the other thing is that there was a point at which CEREBUS was chugging along, and I don't know if the sales doubled or tripled, but when he introduced Wolveroach, it was around issue 60 or so. I know that the circulation jumped, and I don't know how long they sustain that, but I think the Wolveroach was part of what got him up into that 60,000 issues a month circulation that they sustained for quite a while.
It's just so random. You just see him there, and then that whole line with the quick graphs. So weird.
Dream logic, right?
Yeah.
That was the thing with indies and 90s is like parodies were like in some ways more common. Can't think of too many examples now. That is a potential for Comicsgate for crowdfunding. You could try doing a parody because it's supposedly you won't, you're legally allowed to do that. It still might be a little dangerous, but
Pete
you
Samiti
could.
did that a little bit with like his comic that kind of made fun of X-Men, the X farce kind of thing.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and actually no, John Delarose is making fun of Andrew Tate's comic
Oh
because Andrew
yeah.
Tate's comic is called
Top
it's called
Grift.
yeah, and it's called Top G or something in
Yeah.
the comic or whatever. And Ethan did a cover for it, which is hilarious.
I know.
Yeah. Oh my
Um,
gosh. Yeah.
And then yeah, John Delarose is called Top Grift, which is pretty funny.
But that's
Um,
that's the great thing about the indie scene and crowdfunding now is just people could come up with all these ideas, and it's just kind of up to the backers. We can decide what we want to get behind and see
yeah,
created.
and Dave Sim fitting a parody character in the middle of a fantasy epic is kind
It
of
kind of
awesome.
makes sense.
Yeah, and I do remember the Roach character in the first 25 issues. He's in like 5 or 6 of the issues, I think, and one of them is like a little bit longer sequence where Cerberus finds out that he's this crazy guy who's actually amassed like a huge stash of gold in the walls of this old building, and so but he's crazy, so Cerberus is trying to trick him into stealing his gold, and it's like 3 issues long of almost like Looney Tunes style of Cerberus trying to steal this gold, and it's pretty much the best 3 issues of the entire 25 pages.
Does he start out? You've read it more recently than me. Does he start out as the Roach or as Captain Cockroach? What does he start out as? I can't
I
remember.
think he's just the Roach, and it's
Okay.
actually a little bit more
Like a Batman?
spoof.
Okay.
Yeah, because he chases down criminals, and I think he says they killed his parents, and they're like, "What? I don't even know what you're talking about." And then he beats the crap out of them. And,
Hey,
yeah.
Jimmy Rhea is in the chat.
Yeah.
Shout out.
Jimmy, what's up? How's it going, man? Thanks for being here. Down goes Solo, Alex VRB, Comic Ken. Thanks everyone. It says 13 people watching.
I wanted to highlight what Dango Solo was saying. He was mentioning about the pages and how that, the borderless panels. And I thought that was kind of unique to this too.
Oh,
you think of a comic book, you think of panels, right? So,
and the way this is inked too, it makes it look like the grass is blown out. What do they call it? Like the aperture of the photography, like the sun is hitting the grass. So it's registering in the photograph as white.
Oh, like the white balance kind of thing, or
yeah. So it reads as grass, even though he's leaving it white, that's kind of rare. People do that with black and silhouette all the time. They can control the shape of the black ink to like conjure up all kinds of like it's like tricks or whatever to mean like space and to mean like what's there. But it's a lot less so with white where they do that. But this is an example of that, which works really well, and it looks really cool. And it's almost just a texture thing on the edges, like if that texture wasn't there, like maybe we'd read it as snow or maybe we wouldn't read it as anything. But if you get that texture in, then it starts to read as grass. That I think Calvin and Hobbes does that trick a lot of times, and they'll do it for snow actually too. But it's a cool cartooning trick.
Yeah.
Yeah, these 2 splash pages are awesome.
That creature, that is just so strange looking.
So there was that character was a mix of Swamp Thing and the Man Thing.
Oh yeah.
From Marvel Comics, and that character was in that first 20. I think it was in the first 25 issues of the kind of the barbarian part of the storyline.
We got Vaughn in the chat too. What's up, Vaughn?
And then and there's just like the animation, kind of the animation, and then this right here, the next couple of pages are a master class in portraying water, and it's furthermore amazing that it's in black and white. So and it's not just the depiction of the water, but the depiction of his posture.
It's beautiful.
It's just amazing, and it turns in he's basically surfing, right?
Yeah.
So it's just amazing.
Look at the sudsy texture around his feet and how it kind of leaves a trail. That's like awesome.
And then showing like the light kind of refracting, as the crest of the wave. Yeah, very impressive.
Yeah.
It almost reminds me of those old Japanese kind of drawings or paintings, when they do the waves and everything.
One thing too that this is kind of random and this is not exactly true maybe, but there's like a truism type thing that they'll teach you if they're trying to teach you comics, and they say vary the head shapes. And they're what they're saying is like you should have wide shots, close-ups, medium shots, and that is sort of true. But too much of that I almost don't like when it gets real big and real small on a page. And if you keep them pretty similar, that you get a real rhythm with that. And that's I do that more than like this is all like his head's the same, and you just get this rhythm. And there's a slight variation here, a slight closer up compared to these.
It's weird. I almost feel like Alf kind of borrowed from this design.
I know that was the other, because I'm like reading Cerebus and suddenly this elf it's this wisecracking guy with the snout. I'm like, what's going on? This is wild.
Yeah. So I this is more I kind of try and do this in my comics almost where the head shapes are a little more similar and you get a little bit more of like a rhythm. Like actually that's kind of like what Calvin and Hobbes. That's what like newspaper comics are like. Like Calvin and Hobbes is like it's always the same kind of shot, and they always have room for the word bubbles above their head.
Yeah, I do. I really like those 2 pages of him surfing a lot, and even this too here with the black. You just have his design kind of, I guess, with his head on the pillow, just looking groggy.
And then he goes
such a
back
stark contrast, just the blackness and then him. Like that a lot.
Yeah. And then here's snow, and it again you can read it just from as far as like what's even drawn, he's just drawing around the edges a little bit of texture, and then you can tell it's snow. So it's a lot of fun.
And the detail of the cathedral, my God, look at all that.
Yeah, and that's
even
like
in the bricks pillars here.
Yeah,
I interviewed Gary Martin, and he was talking about that, about how hatching will create a percentage gray kind of. So if you hatch over like, and then how thick your lines are. But this is like not a gray tone. This is hatched to look like that, and that they might have this ink splatter over the top of that as well. And all those things together will make it give this dark gray effect. And but it's like this is a black and white book. This is not like a black, white, and gray book. And even like how they do that with Cerebus himself is with a half tone, and those actually aren't drawn. Those are like you buy
Zipatone.
those. Yeah, you buy the Zipatone and you cut it out with an X-Acto knife. It's like something that Photoshop can like emulate it instantly now, but back in the day, you were there with glue, or I don't know if it's glue, but you with your X-Acto knife cutting it all out and stuff.
So in the mid to late 90s, fewer and fewer companies were making the Zipatone, and they basically went and bought up as much Zipatone as they could so they could make it to issue 300. In the art supply store on campus, they were going out of business, and I. At the time, I think I bought like $150 worth of Zipatone. I take that back. I bought about $600 worth of Zipatone for $150, and I had that lasted me till like the year 2000.
Oh wow!
And it was it was an acetate. You kind of square. You kind of get. You take the sheet, and it's like a translucent sticker, and you kind of line it up, and you take the X-Acto knife. You cut out the general shape, lay it on the line art, and then you take the knife and cut it out, and yeah, you had to be really good with the X-Acto knife, but it was fun. It was fun, but there was this gnawing feeling that they would stop making. And to your point, you could do it in Photoshop now with a bucket. But anytime you pick up an issue of Cerebus, just take a minute to look at the textures and the gray tones. There is some Zipatone, but for the most part, it's ink pen and ink cross hatching.
Yeah, and even this, like talking to Gary Martin, they might have like a pattern for this, but this might just be splatter you do with a brush even or something. So it's that.
Look at even the inside of that. What is that, like a
Unk?
Oh, the cross and everything. I can't like point to it, but yeah, on the left page, that last panel, like in there. Kind of like in that cross structure there.
Yeah, it's like really dark and it has that texture. But yeah, that's cool. Excuse me.
Survive.
Yeah. Cool. Well, we might not show it all because I don't know if that like breaks laws or whatever. And it is just a dream sequence, so everyone can but it's a classic. Yeah, and I'm still I have the second phone book, but I haven't started it yet. So I'm looking forward to continuing to kind of check out this series. And
The more I look at this, the more it grows on me. It's just kind of like a strange, I don't know, influence it has on me. It's like I said, at first when I saw it, I was just like, didn't know what to make of it. A little bit kind of off-putting, but yeah, it is really growing on me.
oh, something else is like because he's canceled, and then he kind of got double canceled because there's like a whole an issue with underage blah blah blah, which I don't even know. I don't even know if we don't have to get into it, but because it's like, but that's like the double cancel. So Cerebus has never been like really turned into a TV show or a movie, where it kind of feels like this could have been more of a well-known classic, kind of held in high esteem, which it kind of is, but that's in a little bit deeper circles now, where if you dig down, then people will be like, oh, have you read Cerberus yet? And you're like, no. They're like, well, you got to read that. That's a classic. But there may come a time when it does get hit up by like Hollywood or Netflix or whatever, because it feels pretty fun how like his design is so iconic.
Did it ever win an Eisner or anything like that?
I don't know. Do you know, Jason?
So he would often win awards for like best letterer. And it was, and we could do research, and maybe there was a best inker award at some point, but it was one of those things where people who loved comics read Cerebus, but the comic book journalists did not like Dave Sim because he was a little bit too he wasn't conformist enough. He wasn't into like the proper groupthink, and he would if an idea was entertaining, he would entertain the idea, and he would do that in the pages of Cerebus, whether it be in the content of the book or in the letters from the president or the letters page. And so he made all the wrong people dislike him, right? Like Heidi McDonald and Gary Groth and so forth. So that was kind of the climate he was in. He's kind of in his own little island, but by and large, he was doing his own thing. They couldn't stop him, right? And he ran into some issues with the distributors when he first published the first phone book. It was High Society. It was issues 25 through 50. He took the step of basically advertising for the phone book and in the pages of Cerebus. So you have to call with your credit card and order, and he would ship it to you. And I got my mom to order it for me, right? But I didn't know that infuriated the distributors, because they're like, hey, you're selling this for $25. That's $8 we're not going to get times 10,000 copies or whatever. And so they basically were punishing him by at the time he was like a publishing house for a couple other titles like Puma Blues and some other titles like that. And they said, well, we're not going to stop carrying Cerebus because it's selling 60,000 issues a month, but we're not going to distribute the Puma Blues. Take that. And so it was an early kind of preview of the distributor wars, right? Where the distributor wars were the exclusivity agreements. This was them saying, we're going to pick and choose what books of yours we carry to punish you. And what ended up happening is that eventually he would solicit the phone books through Capital and through Diamond, and there at the time there were like 10 different distributors. And some of them were regional. But then he basically said, you know what, I'm going to stop publishing other people because it's too dangerous for them. I don't want to destroy somebody else's career because I have a hot take on something, right? So there's a lot in the history of Cerebus that was pivotal to the indie movement and tells you a lot of insight into the motives and the agendas of the big two, as well as the comic book journalists.
Mm-hmm. Down Goes Solo was asking if Dave Sims is still around.
He is. He's got a there's a YouTube channel called A Moment of Cerebus, and once a week, Dave will basically do a YouTube clip for 15 minutes where he answers mail, and he'll comment on public events in Canada and so forth. I catch it now and then. It's worth a watch.
Cool. Yeah, he has like a new book. I actually bought it and started reading it. I don't know. Maybe I'll show it to you guys later. I don't know exactly where it is, but it's actually funny because it is well written and cool. It's called like The Strange Death of Somebody. It's about
Alex Raymond. Yeah,
yeah.
The strange. That's a good OGN you can pick up. And then he also is about every quarter he'll publish a parody comic book that's basically Cerebus inside of engravings. And so he'll take his own Cerebus, put it inside of other kind of German medieval backgrounds, and kind of do some satire on there. So if you look in the Diamond catalog, you'll see under Aardvark van Heim, there'll be an occasional Cerebus, Cerebus in Hell or something like that.
Nice.
And he's kind of doing it just to scratch an itch.
And something about The Strange Death of Alex Raymond is like, I don't know if this is exactly a critique because it is pretty dang good, but I was like, you know what this is? This is a YouTube video. This is like a well-edited YouTube video essay that is just drawn in comic format, which kind of makes it less cool in some ways. Like there's a million of those, but doing it as a comic is kind of interesting. So Jason, let's take a look real quick at Jupiter, what it's still available on Fund My Comic and Indiegogo.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So so Jupiter's 40 pages full color for $13. Shipping is only $5 for US backers. I am working on Jupiter issue 2, but if you like the Bronze Age, if you like Jack Kirby, if you like Mobius, if you like heavy metal, check out Jupiter. It's got superheroic satire and surrealism. I guarantee you're going to find stuff in there that you weren't expecting you were even looking for, and you're going to find stuff that's not in other indie comic books. So check it out, and I hope you enjoy it.
Yeah, nice. And Abra, you have a YouTube, right?
I do. I recently, it just started blowing up. I had one short that apparently, I guess pleased the YouTube gods or whatever. So they have been really promoting it. It's one about the Pandaverse, the South Park Pandaverse episode. So that I guess was
22,000. Oh, and then 274,000.
Yeah.
No way, almost 1 million. Cool.
$250,000.
Yeah. So it finally happened for you. So you had to stick with it for like, I don't know, like a year. You were editing videos, doing shorts,
It's been a while. I'm still not monetized yet because I have to get the watch hours up. But as I gain more subscribers, I mean that'll come. But it's just nice to kind of feel like the hard work is finally paying off. And I really do enjoy, kind of doing the commentary, pop culture commentary, and had a lot of fun reading John Malin's Black Riding Hood.
Nice. Yeah, it's cool because if the shorts are bringing in subscribers, you have all these like nice, succinct, fully edited videos that are like, and they're not like sometimes if it's like, I don't know, sometimes if people will email me or they're like, I reviewed your book and I almost can't retweet it because it's like 30 minutes of them saying too much. Yeah. And I'm like, but then, so I appreciate yours because they're like 4-minute videos getting straight to the point. It's like
I've kind of come to learn that the average attention span these days is very, very small. So I try to keep it within those, time frames. Yeah, but I enjoy doing it. I love doing the movie reviews, kind of like the pop culture commentary. I like video games. Just finished that Spider-Man video game, which I have a love-hate relationship with.
Yeah, what'd you think about Mary Jane's epic jaw?
Yeah, I was looking for the Adam's apple there, but it's striking how they had to really kind of frump her up. She looks like a 45-year-old wine cat aunt.
Yeah. Something about that too is the way they used to draw her it was actually super iconic, and it looks kind of different than any other girl. Like who even was it? Ramita Senior,
Yep.
maybe. I think that's who I picture when I picture how they drew
Yep.
her. And
If
she
they
was
if they copied the model that's portraying her, oh my God. I mean, she's drop dead gorgeous.
yeah,
That's all they had to do. But the writer did a self insert, so it seems. And
yeah, it's so weird when it works backwards like that. They like
Yeah.
undo. All they had to do was nothing, but they
yeah,
like somehow.
exactly. It's like they took the Mona Lisa and then just urinated on it or something. I don't know.
Yeah. So the last one to promote is a Hotel Story, which we passed 15,000 the other
Yes.
day. So
Nice.
yeah, 257. So 3 backers to 260. It'll still be up in a couple months, so it'd be great to get to 400 or even 500 backers. We'll see where it ends. But Hotel Story is another kind of big, fun graphic novel that I've been working on. When it's all said and done, it'll be like 300 pages in 2 volumes. Kind of reading it will feel like watching a movie, kind of. So it's
Very
like
nice.
Earthbound is like that, and Cerberus even. And Cerberus. Speaking of, when I called it, I have a book called Cerberus that's named after the 3-headed dog.
Yeah.
That's about a dog, and then everyone accidentally calls it Cerebus, and they're like, why did you name it the same as the Aardvark book? And I'm like, I didn't. But then the Aardvark book, it was originally going to call itself Cerberus, named after the 3-headed dog that guards, the gates of hell. But it was Dave Sims' girlfriend messed it up or something.
Typo. It was
Yeah,
the
it
drugs
was like
typo.
Yeah.
it was like a typo. So and then they just rolled with it, which is kind of fun because it's like epic. But it is funny. I always have to in my head, I'm like, Cerebus, Cerberus, and get them mixed up. Everyone's saying
Now
them
I'm definitely going
differently.
to get them mixed up all the time now.
Yeah, it's like which is which. Yeah. Vaughn. Mary Jane is the girl next door we all had a crush on at one point.
Well, now she's the dude next door they want you to have a crush on.
Yeah. And she's in canon like a model too, like a supermodel even. So
Oh man, they had her with a taser that could like one hit knock out the toughest enemies, and yeah,
oh, that's so funny.
riding a Harley like with just some like slip-on shoes, and I was like,
Yeah,
what?
it's even in the new Superman, or Spider-Man. I read a little bit of it for like a well-read review type thing. So
Yeah.
it's like some actual new comics that I've actually read, and it's funny. It was drawn by Romita Jr. and it was not the greatest. Like he was kind of phoning it in, and then
Well, yeah, you could understand why.
yeah, and they were trying to because he's one of my favorite artists. Yeah, but then they gave her superpowers, so they wanted to give Mary Jane superpowers, and they gave her like a weird superpower where she's called Jackpot, and she's like a slot machine.
What the hell?
where she doesn't like know what her powers are going to be until she pulls her own slot, and then
Oh.
has to wait while her powers like ching ching ching, and then she's like, I got smoke powers this time, and she'll smoke someone.
My God.
And it's just the dumbest thing I've ever seen. I feel so sorry for her.
Creative bankruptcy.
Yeah.
Creative.
Yeah, sometimes it's like it's so bad it's good, but you're like, but this is Mary Jane. Like they're ruining an iconic character. Like I don't know. So, but sometimes I'm like an accelerationist. I'm just like, all right, ruin everything. As much
Let
as
it
you
all
can,
burn.
yeah, because it's funny at this point. But
yeah, it really has become a parody.
yeah. But with that, this is a good, nice 1 hour video. I'm going to retweet it. I hope people catch it on the replay because this show, we're trying to make it pretty focused and it is really fun. We talk about different specific comic issues every week. Jason's got a great encyclopedic knowledge of like,
oh my God. Yeah.
and it always comes up. It's a lot of fun and little stories that you'll say, like, I'm like, man, that's epic. That's cool. Like,
so insightful.
Yeah. And he's got a long list of books that we can look into and check out. So we're going to continue to do that. We're trying to do it once a month. And possibly it might even go to bi-monthly at some point, and we might start rotating channels too. So keep an eye out for that. But we have an official name. It's called The Panel, and we have a intro video, which I might play it for the outro video.
Yeah.
So I'm going to play it and then we'll get out of here. So
awesome.
Thanks everyone. I'm going to click it right now.